Hi,
How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Welcome to Tea Talks.
Yeah.
You want to just introduce yourself to the people who don't know you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Joe. My name is Johanna. I am from Singapore. I moved to England 3.5 years ago. I came here for uni at first, but I'm now trying to stay on in the country as best as I can. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Nice. So, I mean, we met in university. It's kind of weird that we are talking like this because, like, yeah,
You can pretend you don't know me, so
yeah. So,
all good.
obviously, for the people who don't know us, we met in university, and um, I don't know because a lot of people who I don't really know who watches the show, but people from back home probably is like, why is she from Singapore? She doesn't sound like this.
No. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No, but yeah, we can go into that later or not. But I just want to ask you, how did your musical I wouldn't say musical career, but like how did you start like playing music or just I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the same as any other Asian kid, I was forced into it. It was not by choice, honestly, because I started learning the piano when I was 6. That was the first thing I learned. I did it with my sister at first, who's 7 years older than me. And then so she did it for about a year. And 1 year into it, she was in secondary school in Singapore. So she was like, I actually have too much on my plate. I'm going to quit. And I was like, okay, I'm going to quit with you. And my mom was like, no, how dare you? You stay on. So I don't remember when the point came where I went from hating music and doing piano lessons to actually loving it. I think probably sometime towards the end of primary school, going into secondary school. So that would have been like 12, 13 years old for me. But to this day, my mom holds it against me. She always says, like, you know who to thank. Um, yeah, so it's kind of a strange one. Like, I actually really hated it when I started, but I think maybe slowly I realized that actually music came really naturally to me. And yeah, I just sort of understood it. I was a really quiet kid, very shy, and so I guess music was my outlet. Um, so fast forward to today, I am dabbling in songwriting. I always loved the idea of writing songs. I think I started writing poetry first, um, and yeah, it's just something I'm exploring. I enjoy it, and yeah, that's where I am now.
Wow, that's so cool. But because you did music in A levels, right? When
Yeah,
you were in JC. Um, like I mean we can all I was forced into piano as well. Like I started when I was like 7 and um I do really love music, but I think I turn out really different from you. Like I can't play the piano like I have a great A in piano, but I can't
really,
play.
I don't know
You didn't know, right? Yeah. I don't tell anyone about it because
that course.
it's not yeah. What you hear is not equivalent to what's on paper. So I don't say
No,
anything about it. But when you decided to like because A levels, right, or JC in Singapore, like it's not a joke. Everyone is so like I don't know how to explain it, but you got I got
yeah,
yeah, it's like
yeah,
we're not playing, we're studying, we're gonna study and be the Prime Minister of Singapore, that kind of thing happening in JC.
yeah.
Oops, sorry. But like what like how was the process of you like deciding to take music as a subject? Because I'm just imagining your friends, like
Yeah. So that's why I said that for me, the turn. What was the word I'm looking for? Like the change kind of came when I went into secondary school because when I was looking at secondary school options, I only looked at schools that did music elective. Um, so that was, I think, the beginning of me already knowing that I want to do music a little bit more. And so I only chose schools with music elective, and that's how I ended up in National Junior College, NJC. Um, it's not an official MEP, but still, like, the music program there is brilliant. Would recommend it to anyone. Um, so I guess like it started way even before A levels, because music is really intensive in nature. If people think we're just sitting at the piano practicing all day, ooh, like that's not a right picture. Um, no, yeah, it's really intensive, and it's funny because when I was at school, a lot of the times, I felt that I was doing music full time and everything else part time. I guess that's also why I failed everything else. But like my friends can attest to that too. Like I was in the music room all the time and pouring all my time into music and nothing else. So that's kind of the long answer as to how I did music at A levels. Like it was kind of a gradual build up towards that. Yeah.
Okay, that really makes sense. Okay. Well, I have something. Another question I want to ask you is, obviously we're in a pandemic, we're in a lockdown.
Yeah.
What? What is one thing you've learned about yourself during this pandemic?
Wow. Hitting with the tough questions. One thing I've learned about myself. Um, I would say that this pandemic has been interesting. The last year has been interesting just because it's both been the best and worst year of my life. I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of people when I say that, the year hit us by storm. And for me, I was graduating uni. And so everything was just shifted in a moment when I realized that, okay, I'm not graduating into the world that I thought I was going to graduate into. And I think in some sense, because in the UK, well, in the UK things are not great, right? So we've been in and out of lockdown for ages, and things are, I would say, comparatively much worse here than a lot of other places. Um, so I've spent a lot of time indoors and alone. Um, and there's something about lockdown that I feel like it forces you to confront yourself. And for me, that was a difficult thing because I do struggle with the thoughts that I have sometimes. That I used to have struggles with mental health in the past, and it's a chapter that's closed now. But like we're all human, and sometimes we slip into that again. So I say that it was a really hard year for me because I guess there were a lot of issues that surfaced in my life, but at the same time, the best year for me because I was forced to grow a lot. Um, so that was kind of a very roundabout answer to to say that I think I'm learning to be a lot kinder to myself at the moment,
Wow.
and to be fully human, um, and learning that that's okay sometimes. Like it's okay to rest in our humanness and not be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I totally feel you. Like it literally is the best and worst year of my life as well. And yeah, I think mine is very similar to yours. To embrace what you're feeling, the pain, embrace the pain. That's yeah, that was what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Embrace the pain, but at the same time, knowing that there's something better ahead, like this pain is necessary for me to grow into what's there for me in the future. That was like literally what the pandemic is. And I
Yeah.
think yeah, it's still happening, like even now. So
Exactly. That's it. Like pain is not always a bad thing, um, because we go through growing pain, so it is uncomfortable for sure. No one likes that kind of pain, but it takes us to a better place in the end. And there's a great quote that's like, sometimes you feel like you're being buried, but actually you're being planted, and in fact,
mm,
you're actually growing. And the two things feel very similar, but it's knowing like what to do with the pain that you feel, I think. Yeah.
but yeah, in this pandemic, you also release your first songs and then followed with a lot more. And Fly Away was the first one. I was there at your song launch thing, and oh my gosh, when you explained to me like what the song was about, and then you sang the song, I was like, oh, what's this thing in my eye? Like,
Water.
It's feeling kind of heavy, you know.
Aw,
But yes, can you? Yeah, I would love you to perform that song for us. But before you do that, can you just tell us like what's the song about?
sure. So the song's called Fly Away. I think the dates are kind of blurry in my head, but I think I wrote it in October 2019, sometime around there. And it was released, I don't know, February 2020. I don't know, early 2020. I really can't remember. But this song was really quite interesting, quite special in a lot of ways because for me, I enjoy songwriting and it's something that I really want to grow in. But even though I'm proud of the songs that I come up with, they don't come in a way where like that is I think the way it comes to a lot of songwriters, in the sense where like for me like between song to song, the songs that I write, there's actually quite long gaps because I take long time to finish each song. Sometimes years. And so Fly Away was crazy because the entire song came to me in one day. And it was like a download from my brain onto my iPhone notes, onto the ukulele. Like it was so natural. I think mainly because it was like, it was very fresh, very raw. It was what I was going through at the moment. So the song is basically about me being in the UK, just to very generally sum it up. But it came out of a conversation that I had with my dad because I am now trying to stay in the UK after uni, right? And I have been doing so, but it was quite hard for my parents, I think, because they expected me to be back home in Singapore. So the conversation didn't exactly go how I wanted it to. And there was a lot of pain that came out of that. But I wrote this song kind of as what I wish my dad would have said. Um, and hopefully, like, also me trying to understand his perspective. And I think it really helped in some sense. It was quite cathartic, I would say. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what the song is about.
Nice. I'll let you perform the song, but we'll continue this conversation later because I have things to share, things to share. So the
Okay,
stage is yours.
okay, thank you. I'll grab my ukulele.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Fly Away. Say now, little birdie, please don't rush to fly. Dreams will take you far, far away from human eyes. Know the wind is calling you by your name. If I let you go, then everything will have to change. My sister and brother have gone. I'm holding on to this last song, and all I can do is sing along. Fly away now, little birdie, out of this cage that I have made. Great big world is ready for you, and I will be waiting. Just tell me it won't be long. Fly, fly away, fly away, fly, fly away, fly away. People always tell me how brave I must be. I don't know if it counts if I still replay your melody. I hope you write me letters and ask about my day. Even if you don't, I'll pretend that you're asking anyway. My coffee is getting colder. I still feel you on my shoulder. The truth is I'm getting older. Fly away now, little birdie, out of this cage The great big world is ready for you. I will be waiting. Just tell me it won't be long. Fly, fly, fly away. Fly, fly, fly away. Fly, fly, fly away. Fly, fly, fly away.
Yay! Wow. I really love this song. Like I think I've told you a lot of times, but this song like made me cry a lot of times as well.
Oh,
I think because like after I heard the story behind the song, I was like, oh my gosh, like I literally relate to this like too much with all my heart. I relate because I literally have the same conversation with my parents. Um, because I'm the middle child, I don't really tell my parents a lot of things. Because I've always been doing things like on my own, and
mm,
I've always thought of I'm like, of course I'm gonna stay in the UK, in my head, but I've never like told them about it. I've told my mom a lot of times, but my dad has never like heard about it before. And like literally like the day before I came back to the UK last year, my dad was like, blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh, I'm not coming back. And then he was shocked. And I'm like, you because it's my dad's like life mission basically of him working so hard is to send all of us abroad to study because he didn't get to.
mm,
um so basically my elder brother went to Australia and I am in the UK now, and my little brother is studying in Singapore.
mm.
But like I don't know why do they ex like they work so hard to send us away, but they expect us to like come back.
Yeah.
And they never thought of like, oh, if I send them away, they might love the country, or like find an angmo husband and then stay there, because and then I'm like, why? And he was like, oh, we prefer you to be near, just like maybe you can work in KL or like go to Singapore. I'm like, no, I'm in the UK and living my best life.
I mean, I feel like a lot of it is cultural as well because we come from a culture where, um, in some sense, I know we're in a very different generation now, but there's still a sense of like you shouldn't leave your family or at least be too far away. If not, that's kind of like disgraceful. There's no filial piety, and it's almost unspoken most of the time, isn't it? But I don't know, it's so strange because it's like what you said, like, surely if you send your child away, there's a chance that they may, like build a different life over there. But I don't know, it's a tricky one because I had to struggle and like kind of find the answers to that myself a lot as well because I I was really torn in my head. I was like, I've built a life for myself in the UK, but there's also this like entire like life of expectations for me in Singapore that like how much of it am I required to fulfill? How much of it do I want to fulfill? Um, essentially it's such a weird thing to step into. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, like we love our parents, it's not like we don't want to be with them, like we want to, but like they did the same thing as well when they reach an age like their 20s or whatever.
Mm,
They moved out of their home, right?
mm,
Like there was this point of time where I felt really guilty of like being away from home. Wasn't even
mm,
like I want to stay in the UK. I was just away from home and I felt really guilty because I was like, oh my, I can't be there with my family, like sometimes when they need help, I'm like, I feel like I was the one who was supposed to be there for them, but I couldn't. And I was like so guilty and I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And you're just torn. Like, it's like, is it selfish for me to want to build a life myself, and not be with my family? But I thought about it and I was like, they left their family as well. They moved to the city. So I'm not guilty anymore. Guilt free.
yeah. I think it's tricky because obviously it's different for for everyone, like from person to person. We're not saying that like go abandon all your families, go run away as far as you can. Obviously not. You know, like every person's calling and every person's path is different. But I remember that when I was younger and when I saw Singaporeans going abroad to study and kind of never coming back, I was one of the people that thought like, how could they? Like, I can't believe they abandoned their family, they abandoned their country. No, and then now I'm the hypocrite, but you know, it's funny because like I said, like you and I we go to church, we live in God, and you know, like God calls each of us different things. So there's no one size fits all. It's like what you think God is calling you into it and what you think is best at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also what God is speaking to you at that season of your life, you know. Like what is like God, if you want me to stay here, you better take care of my family back there because they're not my responsibility, they're yours. Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes a whole lot of trust, right, to say that, to say actually like me being away from home requires me to trust that actually God is taking care of my family back home as well.
Yeah. And I think it's very different for a Singaporean to kind of leave home, you know. Like me as a Malaysian, people leave home as well. Like people go to KL to study, you know. But in Singapore, like nobody does that. Everyone is at home. Everyone is living with their parents until they're 30. Because I
Because
remember,
the country is so small.
yeah, exactly. Um, and I remember moving to Singapore when I was 17 for A levels. I moved in to Singapore and I lived there. And my friends was saying like, "Oh, I think I can." They're like, "You're so brave. I don't think I can ever do that." I'm like, first of all, my parents are just across the bridge and I go home every weekend, so it's not that deep. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you have to like do your own laundry, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm realizing that I have to do my own laundry. I have to like pay my phone bills when it comes. I have to cook. I have to decide what to eat every day." That deep for me, like when I was still 16. I was just like, oh yeah, I need to buy food, you know, that kind of thing. But to them it's like, oh my gosh, like wow, I think I can never do that, man. Like without they were like, I can't live without my parents. I'm like, yeah. So I think your experience is so different from all my friends that are in Singapore, like studying university in Singapore, right? And even like for you being a musician, how different is it to like play in Singapore versus like playing here in the UK?
Ooh. Mm, my comparison is a bit skewed because when I was in Singapore, I was primarily a classical musician.
Mm.
So I've been classically trained my whole life, and so doing music in Singapore for me, up to now, always looked like classical concerts, performing through school, performing at the Esplanade, um, and just a lot of like piano recitals, cello recitals, things like that. Whereas since I moved here, I did do classical music at uni, but this is also the place where I started exploring my own songwriting and doing music in church a lot more and kind of moving away from the classical scene. So it's a bit hard for me to compare just because I've kind of been doing different things then and now. But I will say that it's been interesting still because doing music feels so much more natural here in the sense where like if you say that you study music and you do music, the reaction is not so dramatic. Like over here, if I say I do music, people will be like, most of the time at least, people will be like, "Wow, like that's so cool. Tell me about it." Da 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 da. When I say I do music in Singapore, people be like, "Oh,
Oh.
like oh, okay." And they don't really know what to say, which is really awkward sometimes. And I get it because it's harder to do music in Singapore. The music scene is growing. It's not there yet, I would say. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've really enjoyed doing music here just because I do feel like there is more room to explore and more room to kind of like wiggle room, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So can you perform Come With Me for us now?
So now,
Sliding it in there.
um, sure, I'd
Yeah.
love to.
Do you just want to tell us like roughly what was it about?
Sure. Um, so this one, my songs tend to be about quite big and sometimes heavy subjects, but um, also quite upbeat in nature and in music at the same time. So it's a bit of an interesting one. But this one is about anxiety and battling anxiety, which is something that I've gone through over the years. Um, and it's kind of just a message for anyone who is battling that, like kind of struggling with their thoughts, feeling like their mind is racing all the time. And it's kind of a bittersweet song because it was written about a friend who I saw who I had grown way out of anxiety, but I saw myself in her and
Mm.
kind of like saw the same struggle. And this is kind of written as a song to her, being like, I wish you would come with me and I wish you would like take steps out to grow out of anxiety with me. Yeah, so I'll sing it now. All right. Sorry. Okay. We were both afraid, living in the dark. Never would step out of it. And the tiniest whispers jump out of our skin. Watch the panic going round and round. Oh, the dark was the place to be. Something about the voices crawling up and down my brain. Oh, the dark was the place to be. Till I came to see. Come with me now, darling, into beauty after beauty. All this that there is to see. Oh, I wish you came with me. Now I look at you, so far away from me. You never dared to come outside. It's not that you don't want to. It's that you don't know how. So I'll try my best to lead the way. Oh, the dark was the place to be. Something about the voices crawling up and down your brain. Oh, the dark is the place to be. But one day you will see. Come with me now, darling, into beauty after beauty. Why have I been hiding from these colors on my skin? Sunshine making echoes of my heart that's slowly growing from the kiss of all I see. But I wish you came with me. Oh, I wish you came with me.
Yes, that's Johanna Lim with Come With Me. Oh my gosh, that's such a good song, man.
Thanks.
Um, so you've been talking, I mean, you've kind of told us about how you've gone through mental health and stuff, and I'm really proud that you can say like it's a closed chapter now, because I don't think we've really like people talk about mental health all the time, you know. They're always like, oh yeah, yeah, this, that, this, that, but I've never really heard someone say like it's a closed chapter now. We leave that behind, you know. Um, but do you want to kind of tell us like what was the journey like for you of healing for you?
Sure. Um, so For me, the struggle with mental health was kind of, in some sense, I like to say it was a long time coming. And there were kind of fragments of it in my childhood that I never saw until it actually really unfolded in my teenage years. I was struggling with depression, with anxiety, and an eating disorder, lots of things really, the whole package. But um, I think a lot of it was to also do with the fact that, like I said before, I was really quiet, didn't really dare to say much, and so I kept so much inside of me that it had to bottle, like like spill over. Um, and so in my teenage years, I was struggling with all this, but I didn't know how to vocalize it. And I was scared of vocalizing it. And I think that's the stigma around mental health that we still have today, right? That it's kind of taboo to talk about it, especially back in Singapore.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really talk about mental health there.
No, they
And
don't believe in depression. They don't believe it. They're like, you just need to eat more or like drink more water.
yeah, it's like, oh, have you eaten yet?
Yeah.
Here. No, I think the conversation is getting louder and it is getting better, especially as the next generation rises up. But it, it still has a ways to go. Um, and so that was my struggle. That I had so much inside of me. There were so many thoughts in my head, but I didn't know how to put it out there. But by God's grace, really, it was a good friend of mine who was my youth leader at church back then who started noticing that I was really struggling. She saw that I wasn't eating, that I wasn't really myself, um, and it took some very honest and very honest and ugly conversations, I would say, of her just saying like, "Hey, like something is not right, and we need to fix it." And to some people, that might sound really harsh or really blunt, but actually, that was what I really needed at the time. It was tough love. Um, so it was a journey out of it in the sense where I had people journeying with me, my friend, my pastor, other people in my life. Um, and I can't really tell you like June 24th, this and this year, like was the day I was healed and everything left my body. But like it was just people journeying with me, actually seeking professional help as well, going to see psychologists and whoever, that it I can't remember when, but there was one day where I just looked back and I realized that, you know what, I think I'm growing to be a very different person now.
Wow.
And it's not forced, it's not something that I'm trying to put on, but it's something that's coming from the inside out. And I knew that was God doing the work in my life, because for the first time in my life I could look at everything in my hands and say that I need to stop trying to do everything on my own. I need to stop trying to fix things and be perfect at everything. I really struggle with perfectionism, if you haven't realized. But surrendering that to God and saying, like, actually, I need to trust that you've got things in your hands, and I just need to step back sometimes and say, I'm way out of depth here. Um, so yeah, like I said, I can't really give you a pinpoint date of, this is when things got better. But for me, it was years, and that's why now I can look back and realize, because I was a very different person then as to who I am now, that I can say that that is a closed chapter. Because even though, like I said, we're human, we always fall back into what used to be from time to time. But also, I now have confidence knowing that God has set me free from that. And I want to say also that saying it's a closed chapter is kind of a choice. And
Mm.
I want to be careful here, because I don't want to undermine people who are like struggling with mental health, and it's really hard for them to have any energy to make any kind of choice. But do you know what I'm trying to say? Is like, I can sit here and say, oh, things are different now, but who knows? Like, those thoughts, those depressing feelings might come back anytime. But I can also choose to say, mm, Actually, no. Like I'm not letting that into my life anymore. And even if it tries to creep in, I'm gonna push it out. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you grew from, right? You got this strength and you've kind of trained yourself, and not really trained, but you, you grew stronger, and you have this strength in you that can say no. Like, I don't claim that this is not my portion. Yeah, because I feel like now, in obviously we acknowledge people that really struggle with mental health, but in a way I feel like on social media people are kind of like glorifying it. I mean, like, there is it is normalized now, like people talk about it more, and I don't think mental health, like anxiety, depression and stuff like that, I don't think they are, because people diagnose people with like, oh, you have this disorder, you have that disorder, and it can sound like, oh my gosh, like when someone is already struggling, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm there's something wrong with me, that kind of like thing. But I feel like it's more like a symptom of what we go through. Like, it's I feel like it's normal to have anxiety, and it's kind of, when you go through trauma, of course you kind of go through some form of like depression or
Mm,
mental health struggle. It's not normal to go through mental health issues, but it is normal to like have gone through trauma, and then it comes with trauma, right? But people are kind
mm,
of glorifying it and kind of like putting labels on people now, like, because it's so talked about right now, right, on social media. They're like, oh yeah, like, and sometimes people let that define who they are. Like,
mm,
you might just not really feel like talking to people today, but they'll be like, oh, I have social anxiety, like I don't blah blah blah. And sometimes I feel like there is like this part of like the mental health thing that people are kind of glorifying, like it's kind of cool to have like, to be like, oh, I'm anxious, like, yeah, that kind of, I don't know, like, I do kind
mm,
of see on social media, and I feel like we need to be so much more wiser in approaching like mental health issues, because they are really real and people do really go through it. And
right.
there's so
Yeah.
much information going on, on social media, like, yeah, do this, do that, blah blah, like, yeah, it is overwhelming, especially someone with mental health issues going online and seeing all these things being
Mm,
said about you. And then you're like, yeah,
yeah. I get what you're trying, what you're saying, and it's so tricky, that balance, because those labels and those diagnoses are there to help people recover. Because once you can identify what the problem is, like then you can see the pathways to recovery. But at the same time, like what you said, um, there's that tension between that and clinging on to the label that's given to you. And I struggled with that personally a lot as well, because finally when I went to see a psychologist, and then she was like, okay, you have um, what am I trying to say? You have depression, you struggle with anxiety too, this and that and that. And I was actually so hungry for her to give me a label. And in some sense, when I heard those words, like there was relief, thinking like, oh, like is this and that problem? I'm not just crazy. Um, but then also part of me wanted more. I wanted her to tell me, actually, you also have this and that problem, this problem. And like what you said, because that kind of makes things okay sometimes,
mm,
um, but not in the best way, because you default to that label, and you take that as who you are.
yeah,
And like what you said, all over social media, right? So like talking like real talk for a moment. Last year when I was struggling a lot, for a month or so, whenever I went into social media, there were so many posts about how people with I can't remember what exactly it was. I think it was this sort of depression, and like people. Anyway, I don't want to like make up something that I didn't see. But basically, it was those kind of posts that's like, if you have this and this sort of mental health problem, these are the symptoms that you usually face, and this is how you usually behave. And I found myself obsessively like looking at these posts and trying to find myself in them, and being like, oh, check, check, check. Okay, like now I have a label, and it makes me feel good. And I don't know how the brain works like that, but it's like what you said. You have to be really careful not to like take on labels that you don't need, because that's not your identity anyway. You're not made to be. You're not made to have mental health issues. you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And there's so many people talking, like these 17-year-olds, like, hey guys, yeah, just here to say, like, this is a safe space. Like, yeah, I've gone through depression, and you can talk to me about anything. Like, there's these like 17-year-old, 18-year-olds that are not professionally trained, giving out advice. Like, yes, there is a lot of value in your experience and how you in your journey, we value you, we honor you. But like, it's they you need to realize like who you are kind of dealing with and who can come across your content. But yeah, like, it's just this. I feel like as a generation that is so much more open about acknowledging this, we need to be careful as well, because people are struggling, man. And especially like in these times, people are just so lonely, and things are happening at home that we don't know about. So yeah, choose
Mm.
your words wisely, kids.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly it. You don't want to ever undermine someone's experience because that's real to them. You don't ever want to compare it to someone else's experience as well, because just because it's different doesn't mean it's real. Not real, sorry. Um, but you also don't want to glorify it. So yeah, it's tricky. And like you said, you have to be really wise in navigating it, especially in this day and age, which is why I'm really thankful for the Holy Spirit in us.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, there definitely needs to be a lot of wisdom in going about approaching mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope 2021 is going well for you. It's already like 21st of January. Can you believe?
Can't believe it. No.
Crazy. Yeah, what is something you're looking forward to in 2021?
Well, I don't have a particular one thing in like particular that I am looking forward to. But so, because currently I am doing a year with church. I'm on this thing called the Advanced Program, which is basically a year volunteering for the church 5 days a week. Plug equippers.com. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's a great program. And because we like to say that you give God a year, and that's basically what I've done. I've set aside everything. I was actually hoping to get a job in the UK. So what I thought I was going to do was very, very different, but I've ended up giving a year voluntarily. Because of that, you always reap what you sow, right? And so I don't have a particular thing that I want to come out of this year, but um, at the same time, I'm really excited for what is going to come out, if that makes sense, because I know that like this is going to be a significant year in my life that I can look back on in the future. And so I'm just really excited to grow in every way in 2021. Yeah.
Wow, great. You told me that you have half a song for us at the beginning. Do you want to do your review?
Sure. Okay, this one is a bit tricky because I might not remember the lyrics. I don't have any lyrics written anywhere. But basically, um, I had to quarantine in Singapore in August of last year, August 2020, just because I had to go back to sort some visa issues, and I ended up doing the what we call SHN, stay-at-home notice, in a very nice hotel. But I had nothing to do for 14 days, right? And there was only so many Netflix shows I wanted to watch. I didn't want to spend all day on screen. So I set myself a little challenge. And I challenged myself to write a 1 minute song a day for 14 days.
Oh,
Because like I said, like songwriting is a very long process for me. So I wanted to practice like getting it out there like very, very quickly. So this half a song is a 1 minute song that I wrote on quarantine day 4. Um,
wow.
and it's very apt to what we've been talking about, as to like what I've been learning, to be kind to myself, and because like this story was not this story, sorry, this song was basically like I think it was 10 p.m. or something that day, and it got to a point where I was like, I haven't wrote a song today, and I was like, oh no, and then like I was like, no, I'm gonna fail this challenge. It's day 4, blah 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 blah, and that's how this song came about. I won't say anymore because like the lyrics are quite self-explanatory. But yeah, this is I don't have a title for it. This is quarantine day 4, I guess.
That's a pretty good title, I would say.
All right, I will sing it. Hard to remember the lyrics. Haven't wrote a song today, gotta get it right, that's okay. Trying to grab a hold of time, little do I know that it'll be fine. Cause I'm learning to be kinder with the words I feed my head. Who'd have thought that that may look like taking space to breathe instead? So go on heart, take a break, go on head, take some time to be. That's all you need. So go on feet, do a dance, go on words, take that chance to be some fun to me. That's
Oh my
it.
gosh, I love this song. Are you writing the full song?
No, not really.
No! You know what's the most annoying thing about having friends that write songs? They just listen to these songs and then they don't put it out. And you're like, I love that song, but I can listen to this in like a Zoom call quality, you know? It's so frustrating. But my last question for you is, if yeah, to all the people who are thinking of, just on on the line of like, oh, I don't know if I should like start writing songs and put songs out, like for people like that, especially for people, back home, that there's not really an environment for them to kind of grow creatively, like what would you say to them?
Wow. I would say don't don't put pressure on yourself to create a final product. Because you're not writing songs for the sake of writing finished songs. You're probably writing songs because you love to write.
Mhm.
And so, for example, for me, I did those short 1 minute songs, and maybe sometimes that's all you need. You just need to get a little bit out there. Either to, I don't know, you need to offload something from your mind, or you're trying to communicate something, or whatever it is. Just do little bits of it because that's how you grow anyway. But yeah, like I said, sometimes maybe that's all you need. Um, and I will say it is scary to be vulnerable because you are putting what you think and what you feel out there. But the rewards are so satisfying. Not because it like isn't you. You don't do it to hear your friends say, "Oh my gosh, that was so good." Da, da, da. No, like it's just because there's something inside of you trying to get out, and so once you get it out, even for me, like just on my iPhone notes, like that's sometimes all you need, and yeah, just do it in little bits, I would say. That's my advice.
Yes, exactly, I agree. Like even starting this Tea Talks thing, like I just wanted to talk to my friends, like have this chance to talk to my friends about stuff like this, like
Mm,
that might not even surface in day-to-day conversation. Yeah. And to let people see, like, you can have conversations like this. Like they might never have heard of people, like friends, talking about mental health like that. They might always just joke around with their friends and go home and never get to talk about it. So kind of showing people that, you know what, you can do it. And it's really just for fun. Like, look at me, I'm just talking to friends and like having a blast. Like, I don't care how many people watch it, and that's like the most fun of like, because if you really want like a big career, right? Like, let's say like my goal is to be Oprah. Like, there's so many things to think about when you are Oprah. You have to think of budget, this, blah, 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 blah. But like now is the time to have fun, It's always like the beginning that's like so much fun, so much passion, and you just don't have to care about what people think. So
yeah, exactly. Like I used to, and I still struggle with this sometimes. I always think that like, who am I to put songs out there? Like, who do I think I am? Like, I'm not Ed Sheeran or something, like,
or
and
Kelly.
who listen to my songs, blah, blah, blah. But as much as people have a right to think that, they're like, oh, she's just a small fry. You have as much as the right to put whatever you want out into the world because you exist in the world, and so you have the right to have a voice. And there's also like what you said, like just do things imperfectly. Like, that's fine. It's absolutely fine because it's so beautiful just to just be imperfect and be human sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Preach. That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank
Um,
you for having me.
Joe is like a big fan of tea talks.
I'm a big fan. I'm a
like,
big
like I've never seen someone react to tea talks like you. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I should keep doing this because Joe loves it so much.
I was so nervous when you asked me. I was like, what? Like, are you sure you want more tea talks?
Like nobody said they were nervous. Nobody was like, I'm nervous to be on TikToks. Nobody. It's just you. Because and I thought about it, I was like, it's probably because you think this is like a really big thing. It's just like me with people on Zoom. But yeah, thank you for seeing the value in this show. I don't know, it's so weird to call it a show.
No, but it's like you say, you don't know who watches it, and it's mainly probably just for your friends. But like, by you having these conversations that don't naturally come up in everyday life, who knows who's the one person that might need to hear it? Like today we talked about songwriting, we talked about mental health, and like even if there's just one person that needs to hear this conversation, like
Yeah.
the effect that comes from that, like the ripple effect, is so much greater than you can imagine.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm definitely doing it for that one person, you know. It's not like, yeah, I don't really care about who watches it, but if that one person watches it and it changes their lives, I'm sold. I'll continue doing tea talks on Zoom for the rest of my life. Yeah, but thank you so much for being on the show. I am looking forward to all everything else that you're doing in life. And I'll see you tomorrow at 10 for our walk.
Yes, just so everyone knows, Christina and I are actually friends in real life. Like, this is not a show. This is not.
Yeah,
Thank you, Papa. Thanks for having me.
no, yeah, but I'll let you go. Have a great night.
Thank
And I'll
you.
see you tomorrow.